And welcome you on in to another episode of the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. It's Mitch Spinelli and Mitchell Valley here to give you the latest on what's going on in the sports world. Mitch, it's good to see you back here again this week, back in your usual spot. I am actually out here in Nashville in my hotel room filming this week's episode, but I'll be back next episode in my usual spot. But it's good to see you again, and we have a lot to talk about this coming week.
Good to see you as well. Lots to get into. We're going to get into it, but good to see the podcast never stops. You take it on the road. You're in Nashville, Tennessee, doing it right now.
Absolutely. I mean, this is not the first time I've done a podcast on the road. I did one in Cleveland a while back, a few of them, I believe. But this one I am in. Just doing it with my laptop and my mobile microphone that I always bring with me. And I'm excited to talk about this stuff. And before we get into the show, we want to give you guys the Big Time Sports schedule of the week. So this is the time we usually take to tell you guys about the programming that's upcoming on Big Time Sports. So Mitch, we start off here in Stark County. What are some of the games that you can tell us are coming up, and which times can you see those upcoming broadcasts?
Well, we have two games this week here on Big Time Sports, but we also have a team in studio on our television show, and that is the Lake boys basketball team, the Lake Blue Streaks, in studio, and you can find that on your television Thursday night at 7:30 p.m. and Saturday morning at 8:30 a.m. And then we have two games this week in Stark County, Mitch. We start off on Tuesday evening with the Central Catholic Crusaders at the Canton South Wildcats. That replay time is Tuesday night at 10:30 p.m. and Wednesday night at 5 p.m. And then Friday, the Bulldogs of Green and the Blue Streaks of Lake will meet in a big time Federal League matchup. Replay times for that Friday night at 11 p.m. and Saturday morning at 10 a.m.
Sounds good. And on Tuscarawas County side, this week we will have the Saints of Tuscarawas Central Catholic High School on the Big Time Sports Show. You can find that on Wednesday at 7 p.m. and Friday at 10 p.m. Now, as far as the games that Big Time Sports will be at this week, we have a game that's coming on Tuesday between the Braves of Indian Valley and the Pirates of Garaway, two of the top teams in the IVC South. That game, I believe, will be in Sugar Creek, and you can find the replay of that game on Tuesday at 10:30 and Wednesday at 3 p.m. And be sure to check out the live stream starting at 7 o'clock on BigTimeSportsOhio.com. That is also courtesy of the local broadcast network. You can also check out on Friday a big one in Strasburg. Malvern, the Hornets, taking on the Tigers. The Tigers and the Hornets are the two top teams in the IVC North right now. Both are getting off to great starts for the season. And you can find that replay on Friday at 11 and Saturday at 2 p.m. And that is all the scheduling for programming we have here for Big Time Sports this week. Let's get right into the show. Mitch, you know, we talked about some of those teams already throughout the scheduling, but a lot of teams getting off to good starts this year on both sides of our respective counties. I mentioned the Hornets of Malvern, the Tigers of Strasburg. Garaway and Indian Valley have a very good matchup in Sugar Creek coming this week, but I want to go over to the Canton side for now. There were a couple of games this past week that were kind of interesting. You were at one game, BTS was at another. Kind of give me a rundown through some of the matchups and some of the team performances.
Well, out of the three Federal League games, which were against other Federal League foes, obviously seven teams in the Fed, which means generally you're going to have six teams in action playing against each other. Let's start off where Big Time Sports was at, and that game was obviously broadcasted, and you go back and watch the replay if you haven't, maybe you DVR'd it. The Lake Blue Streaks come away with a 1-point win over the Jackson Polar Bears, 47-46. This was a nail biter all the way down to the end. This was at what I believe a 2-point Jackson lead at 44-42 with about a minute and 2 seconds to go. And Green comes away with the home win, defending their home court and rebounding after an earlier week loss to McKinley. So Lake knocks off Jackson in terms of unbeaten teams in the Federal League and, you know, really inches themselves back into the Federal League race. And why, we'll get right back into it here in a sec. The other game where I was at is just a casual. We had the North Canton Hoover Vikings at the Green Bulldogs, and this one was a thriller, Mitch. It was fun in the first half. Brady Rollison of Green had 4 or 5 3-pointers. He led the Bulldogs with 15 points at the half. And Green led the entire game. Then Hoover came back and things got interesting in the fourth. These two teams go into overtime tied after 4. And it really, thanks in part to a Wesley Collins 3 that was banked way beyond the arc with about 10 seconds left. He banked it in to tie the game, what I believe was at 44. And then Hoover walks away on the road, a 49-48 winner in overtime at Green. So Hoover picks up a big Federal League win. Green still searching for the first one. But Mitch, why these are both interesting games now is a team that everybody thought was really the favorite to win the Fed was exposed on Friday night. And that was the McKinley Bulldogs. The McKinley Bulldogs at the Fieldhouse, their home court, which is one of the toughest places to play in the Federal League, were defeated by the Glen Oak Golden Eagles 72-46, which saw the Bulldogs score just 2 points in the entire fourth quarter in front of a crowd of over 1,200 people. There was a lot of alumni, some very famous McKinley alums that were there for a ceremony. And Glen Oak took control with a 25-point second quarter lead, and it saw one of their top players in Ja'Cory Lipkins go down and never return. And Glen Oak right now, Mitch, all of a sudden undefeated. They stay unbeaten in the Federal League. They've beaten Perry, now McKinley. They also beat Alliance earlier in the year, and Alliance is a very tough team that we're going to get to cover here later on down the road. It has a lot of high hopes, but McKinley to lose like that at home is unheard of, and that's why the Federal League now is already again wide open. Every team in the Federal League has a Federal League loss now except for Glen Oak. So all of a sudden, Glen Oak sits at the top of the Federal League standings. But this is a team, Mitch, that we really weren't sure what to expect with third-year head coach Rick Hairston. And so far, Glen Oak looks like a machine with how much they are able to score, over 70 points, I believe, in all three of their contests so far this year. And just you cannot talk about them enough and the effort they put forth. And they have a sophomore now we're going to have to keep on our radar, last name Broom, and he was the spark plug for Glen Oak in that win over McKinley. Like I said, Lipkins went out, and just a statement win early on here in the season, 72-46. You don't see that often at the Memorial Fieldhouse in Canton.
Yeah, especially if the Bulldogs are on that side. I had it here. Bryce Broom had 14 points, and Jalen McElroy led the way with 20. Ben Davis also had 15 points as well to help out the Golden Eagles. That's a team that I'm definitely looking out for in the Stark area. As for Tuscarawas County right now, as we mentioned, a lot of the teams atop the IVC right now. But the big thing, too, now is also in Dover and New Philadelphia's side, where the Quakers earlier this week got a Friday night win over visiting Mansfield 61-52, or Mansfield-Madison, in which Coach Zach Ross got his first victory as Quakers head coach. That's a big win for New Philadelphia's boys team, who's gotten a later start to the year than other teams. They'll be playing against Ashland coming on Tuesday. Now, as for Dover was one of our games, and Worcester lost to the Tornadoes 47-42 on Tuesday night. And then on Saturday, a very interesting non-conference decision. The Tornadoes ended up beating Highland 39-35. Bigger school versus smaller school matchup for sure, but the Hawks have gotten off to a different start to their year compared to previous seasons. They've already lost to the Garaway Pirates at home, which if I don't know if you've ever been out into Berlin. That is a very difficult place for many of the IVC's schools to go out and win, especially against a program like the Hawks. So I'm very curious to see what Highland does the rest of the year. I'm also curious to see what Dover does for the remainder of the season, because there's a lot of good players on that team. And Dover operates as an independent throughout the area, so they can kind of, pick and choose their schedule, and they can go up against some very serious teams and keep developing that program enough to where when it comes playoff time, they could have some serious guys that could make a run.
Well, that's something we're going to have to keep an eye out on. And I really respect the fact that they're going up against bigger schools here early on in the season. You don't see a lot of teams test themselves like that, but ultimately, Mitch, no matter what sport or division it is here in high school sports, when you're able to go up and compete with teams above your division, it kind of really shows you the level of what you want to get to eventually. And if you're already there, that's already, great, but it also just makes you stronger. Win or lose, it makes you stronger and prepared for other top-notch teams that you're going to play throughout the season in your conference and in your division.
And I will mention that you might have a chance to see the Tornadoes in action as they will be traveling to Uniontown for a December 23rd matchup against the Blue Streaks of Lake. The Blue Streaks, as I think we might have mentioned this earlier, had that victory this past week against Jackson 47-46. That was a seriously impressive win for them, outscoring the Polar Bears 13-7 in the final period. Chance Kazenheiser, making an early case for player of the year right now, the way he's playing, led that game with 24 points.
And the guard play in the Federal League, Mitch, is incredible, really. When you look at teams like Hoover, who has Wesley Collins, who, although Hoover's record is down, this is somebody that should be on the radar for a potential Federal League player of the year. Now, it's not often a team can have a player of that caliber get that award if they are not able to win the Fed. Obviously, it's still early. Hoover can turn their season around. But then you mentioned Chance from Lake. He was one of the top guards last year in the Federal League. And he is, as the kids say nowadays, a walking bucket. And that is something to keep an eye out on. I mean, the guard play, the post play, every team has a player of some magnitude that can change a game throughout the Federal League. And Chance did that for Lake Friday night. And like you said, they outscored Jackson 13-7 in the fourth. And that's why Lake was able to rebound after a loss at McKinley and get a big time win at home and defend their home court.
Well, I'm excited to see where the rest of the season goes. I'm also excited to see where the rest of our topics take us here after we come back right after these commercial messages.
Buying a home has never been so affordable with record low interest rates. Hartzler's Quality Housing is ready to put over 40 years of experience to work for you. Family owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's has a wide selection of model homes on site with a knowledgeable team to help make your new home a reality. Open 6 days a week, visit them off I-77 in Dover or online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
You invest a lot in your home and vehicle purchases. Van Nostrand Young and Associates want you to feel secure should anything happen to those investments. We partnered with providers like Grange Insurance and other industry leaders to be sure you're presented with the most complete coverage to fit your needs. Because we're not only here to protect the items you invest in, we're here to protect your future as well.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
When others treat your fries as an afterthought, all you're left with are cold, soggy fries. That's why Wendy's new fries are ones you won't forget, guaranteed to be hot and crispy, or we'll replace them. We're talking natural cut, skin-on fries, perfectly seasoned with a hint of sea salt. In fact, they're even preferred almost 2-to-1 over McDonald's. These are fries so hot and crispy, they beg a new question.
What would you like with your fries?
Try them today, only at Wendy's.
At participating U.S. Wendy's. Taste preference based on a national taste test by an independent research company.
And welcome you back here to the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. It's Mitch Spinell and Mitchell Balla talking sports now. We go over now to the National Football League, where we're going to go over some of the games from this past week. All right, let's do it, Mitch. By the way, that was actually 4th and 1 when I threw that hat, believe it or not.
Really? Why wouldn't you just, I don't know, give it to your quarterback that can usually sneak it up the middle for a couple yards, or hand it to Nick Chubb?
But I mean, we've already done it once already, and we've already assumed that enough teams are going to think, oh, they're just going to sneak it in on 4th and 1s. But hey, now think about this: what if we brought in our backup to throw the ball 30 yards down the field long and get an over-the-shoulder catch for a touchdown? It's a great risk. But all right, look, I'm gonna keep this show going because I'm not as so old as other people are that what happened on Sunday and that play was the 100% wrong thing to do. I get where he was coming from, Mitch, because everybody assumes that Jacoby is going to sneak up the middle on that 4th and 1. I get it. You want to score as many opportunities as you can against a Cincinnati team, especially when they weren't getting it done offensively early. It's just unfortunate that play didn't go through, and it's unfortunate when you're bringing in a guy that you're expecting to be your QB1 onto the bench for it to happen.
I hate it. I hated the play
I
call. I
do.
hate how analytics say, oh, we got to go for it. It's also hilarious considering that, at the end of the game, Kevin Stefanski in the press conference said points were going to be at a premium, and passing deep, you gave up a chance to kick a field goal, which last time I checked, Mitch, still counts as points. Last time I checked, I don't know, maybe analytics don't consider field goals points. I don't know. That's something the analytical department might have to check out. Boneheaded play call. I'm used to it by what we've seen this year. I expected them to go for it once it was 4th and 1 because we've seen it all year, and just it doesn't make any sense why you're going to do that play. Once again, getting too cute, trying to outsmart everybody. I've never seen a group that prides themselves on being smart, tough, and accountable try to outsmart everybody instead of just doing the play that we all expected to come. We've seen teams try to stop quarterback sneaks with Jacoby Brissett this year, and I want to say 8 times out of 10, the Browns are still successful in picking up a yard on a quarterback sneak or handing it to Nick Chubb, who is a bruising back, and he can get a couple of yards for you. So,
well, that's the thing. Nick Chubb didn't have his best game against Cincinnati yesterday. They found a way to stifle him along with the secondary.
Yeah, Nick Chubb only had 14 carries for 34 yards, his longest run of 13 yards. And really, Mitch, I think the interesting thing here is since week 9, and I don't know why they have these stats like this, but this is a stat. Since week 9, the Browns have the second worst offensive line in all of football. And it's been pretty obvious. And we've seen it past couple weeks. Chubb cannot get going. And now you're asking an offensive line that is accustomed to run blocking. And even when Baker Mayfield was here, and even when Jacoby Brissett was here, we ran the ball a lot, to turn into a pass blocking line in 2 weeks or less this late in the season. And that's why it looks like our offense is still in preseason form. And Deshaun Watson did look better yesterday.
Yeah.
At the same time, how much better did he really look? We only had 10 points. And that's very concerning for me, because this is an offense that should have more than 10 points. And the season's over now. We can finally relax. We can finally have to stop talking about, this scenario. We need these teams to win. Apparently it's not over, but it's going to take, as one article said, a miracle. The Browns don't get miracles. We know that. We've watched them our entire lives. Just an upsetting game, although it was to be expected. It really was. I mean, the Bengals right now are red hot, Mitch. At the same time, though, the defense, for the most part, at least the whole first quarter, played great.
Yeah.
I mean, how many four drives, I think, that we stopped the Bengals from getting points. And then really it turned into the ref show in Cincinnati in the second quarter. The Browns had 9 penalties for 98 total yards against them yesterday. And really Tony Fields going for the block punt and roughing the punter, not even running into the punter. It changed the whole outcome, complexion, dynamic of the game. Denzel Ward with the phantom PI called against him. And then Burrow threaded the needle to Chase. And really, I never really had much faith yesterday, Mitch, when we were only down by 2 possessions. It felt like we were down by 3 or 4 touchdowns the entire game. And really we weren't. But if you're looking for a play that really could have changed the game, it probably is the play on 4th and 4 near the goal line, where we throw it to DPJ in the corner. And instead of Donovan going up the high point of football, he instead tried to pin it against his chest and it bounced off. That was it right there. But the Browns are done. The Bengals are very well alive, and really, Mitch, I think are probably going to end up winning the AFC North once we get around to everybody else here in the league, because the Ravens are just being plagued by injuries yet again around the same spot they were hurt again last year.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a bit. And 0.4%, by the way, according to ESPN's Football Power Index, is the odds that the Browns can end up making the playoffs still. And look, we didn't think teams like Detroit would still be in the mix, but I'm very much aware this is very unlikely at this point. It does give you an opportunity to just focus in now and trying to get Watson back into playing form. And there were moments yesterday where you get to see what this huge investment the Browns have been making is trying to pay off for. I saw some of those throws he was able to make. He was able to have some nice touches on balls that otherwise would have been intercepted or batted down. I saw him be able to escape a number of times and scramble in ways that Jacoby couldn't. I also saw his times where, Watson didn't have to get the ball out of his hands, and he still did. Like, whether it would be like those quick pitches to guys near the offensive line, to guys like Njoku and Chubb, and it's like, oh, you didn't have to throw that because you could have easily just taken the sack. And you don't want to take a sack, but there are just instances where, it's better to just take the 7 yards rather than risk putting the ball in the air and have somebody intercept it. I mean, we saw what happened on that one play, and give credit to Cincinnati's secondary coming over to help out, but throwing it into what became double coverage at the last second really ended up costing the Browns, especially on the previous play. Watson made that amazing throw as he basically had one leg on the ground.
Yeah. I mean, really that was the one flaw for sure yesterday is Watson stared down Donovan Peoples-Jones that entire time. And I believe it was Jesse Bates, the safety,
Yep.
who read his eyes the entire time. And really, Mitch, what's awesome is I don't even know what the software is, but you see it on Twitter where they have all the pieces that move once the ball's snapped that you can see as circles.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Donovan Peoples-Jones was wide open at first, and Deshaun waited and waited and waited.
long.
And then when he stared him down, he waited way too long. He had enough to just get a first down.
Mm-hmm.
That was really his only mistake. And people might laugh at this, but he didn't throw a lot of balls into the ground yesterday on accident like he did against Houston. We heard Alex Van Pelt the past week say they worked on a lot of mechanical things, and Deshaun said he felt better. This is going to be, what we expect to see now the rest of the way. Can he improve the last 4 games now against Baltimore, New Orleans, Washington, and Pittsburgh to a point where the season ends, you feel confident, he's probably still not going to be his Houston self yet, but go into the offseason, understand what needs to happen. But there was the one thing I love is he was the aggressor yesterday. He would run. And how many times do we see quarterbacks get down and slide? Now, I obviously am going to want him to more times than not, because he is not a Josh Allen big body quarterback that can absorb some hits, or even a Cam Newton. But he still was the aggressor yesterday in terms of running the ball to the outside, picking up yards with his legs, which we are not accustomed to seeing, Mitch. And it's so nice to see that. But this team, as much as we have to see Deshaun Watson improve the next 4 games, if this team checks out, if half this team checks out, if players check out, we're going to be having a different conversation after the season's over about which head coach can come in here and be the right head coach for Deshaun Watson. Because yesterday, Mitch, was not smart, tough, and accountable football like Kevin Stefanski always says the Browns do. Yesterday, he did not make a lot of in-game adjustments, and neither did Joe Woods. You have T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd out, and you never doubled Jamar Chase. Have you ever even heard of the other wide receivers in the Bengals yesterday before the game? Because I didn't. I mean, my goodness, right here. Trenton Irwin, 2 catches, 58 yards, and a touchdown. Trent Taylor, a catch for 34 yards. I mean, there was 15 targets to Jamar Chase yesterday, Mitch, and we did not double him. That is Joe Burrow's favorite target. It's pretty well known. I think if you ask anybody in the NFL, any fan of the NFL, who is Joe Burrow's favorite target, they're going to know it's number 1. And just no adjustments. Again, this team is horrendous at making adjustments on the fly, both offensively and defensively. And I think it's safe to say that anybody that was holding out hope that Joe Woods could possibly be back next year, if there are Joe Woods fans out there, yesterday was the nail in the coffin.
I'm starting to think of that more and more. And I think the next 4 games will be Kevin Stefanski kind of coaching for his job at this point, because if it does go completely off the rails, there is the option that you could have in, and I would hate to see them have to start all over again, but there is the possibility that, hey, this isn't the kind of guy that this current core of players can operate under. I mean, Stefanski is comes off as a very calculated coach, a very level-headed coach. There isn't a lot of obvious nonsense that goes on with him compared to some of the other Browns regimes, but that doesn't mean that nonsense can't happen at all, because there can be stuff that's going on behind the scenes that we just don't know about. And the Browns put up a very good front of being like, we're professionals, we're handling this finally. But a lot of that can leak onto the field at times, and based on the results that we're getting, and you're playing some good teams here down the stretch, but I'm just kind of wondering how much of this is on a team that time and time again just doesn't seem like they are progressing, or they're developing, or they're figuring out the problems. Seems like in times they're creating new ones.
Yeah, they definitely are. And the big thing to remember about Kevin Stefanski, Mitch, Andrew Berry, the GM, did not hire Kevin Stefanski. The Browns hired Kevin Stefanski and then hired Andrew Berry.
Right.
And typically you have regimes that are on the same page. They come in with each other, but the head coach was hired first, and then the general manager was hired first. Now, maybe there was something behind the scenes that said, hey, we know the season's not going to be the way we want it to go because of the whole Deshaun Watson situation, situation.
Right.
And really, I think it was thrown away after the 6 games went to 11 games.
Right.
But how many times have we seen this team just either not prepared to play or have meltdowns offensively and defensively? And that's on the head coach. And that's part of the reason that I believe Kevin Stefanski either A, needs to give up play calling duties to Alex Van Pelt, who also was the head play caller in Green Bay when Aaron Rodgers was there.
Yeah.
Or B, Kevin Stefanski is going to get rid of his menu as a play caller and be looking at menus when he goes out to eat with his family, because he's not going to be the head coach here much longer. And if they lose to the Ravens, Mitch, as we move into the next segment where we touch on the NFL, if they lose to the Ravens, who might have a third string quarterback, this is going to go downhill very fast.
Yeah, if they have that third string and there's a loss, there's a serious problem there. If it's Huntley, I'll see. And we'll get to Baltimore in just a little bit. We'll also get to the rest of the teams right after these commercial breaks.
The Furby Electric Supply Company has bright ideas for your home. Save money by converting to energy-efficient electrical products or add ambiance with beautiful lighting features. It begins with a professional consultation and a visit to the Furby Lighting Showroom. Then certified Furby contractors complete your project right and on time. Since 1934, 4 generations have built a reputation of quality and trust, and they offer emergency services too. Just visit Furby.com. That's F-U-R-B-A-Y. The Furby Electric Supply Company.
You asked for it and we listened. Buckeye Career Center is now offering Certified Nail Technician as an adult education program. This 216-hour course begins in November and will run Tuesday through Thursday evenings from 5 to 9 p.m. Learn manicures, pedicures, infection control, salon operations, and more. Other part-time certification courses starting this fall include phlebotomy and welding. Call 330-339-2288 to register or visit BuckeyeCareerCenter.org for more information.
If you're looking for a new or pre-owned car or truck, why not see the Parkway Auto Group? Parkway is a special group of automotive experts with 8 brands to satisfy your needs. Come see the difference at the Parkway Auto Group on Commercial Parkway in Dover. 8 brands and 1 family. It's Parkway Auto Group. It takes a lot of practice to have a winning team. Albin Title has over 100 years of combined experience handling real estate, title, and escrow transactions. They serve Tuscarawas, Stark, Carroll, Harrison counties, and more. So choose Albin Title for your next home refinance, sale, or purchase. They'll get it done quickly and professionally. Contact Albin Title at 330-334-5800 or visit their website albintitle.com. Let them put their experience to work for you.
Fall is in the air and part-time career enhancement courses at Buckeye Career Center are on the horizon. Registration is now open for Introduction to Beekeeping, Basic Small Engine Repair, and Sign Language. These part-time offerings run on Tuesday evenings and begin in November. Let Buckeye Career Center help you learn a new skill or advance your current skill set. Call 330-339-2288 for more information or to reserve your seat in one of these or our other part-time classes.
Where you matter. You matter. Everyone plays a part. We all have a role. Each of us can make a difference. You do matter, and the best way to have a positive impact is to pay it forward. With each of us helping one another to cope, feel better, and know that we belong. Pass on the positivity today. Tell someone else they matter too. Alt Care.
Alt Care, Alt Care. Where you matter.
And we're back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch, before we get into our next segment, I was going through your Instagram story as I was posting something myself, and I saw your memory from December 12th, 2015. What's up with the inflated whale?
That is Shamu, formerly my imaginary pet that was obviously not real. It was inflatable. My senior year of high school, we bought it for a beach theme, and it just stuck all year. Sort of taking it to all home games for Jackson, and during timeout, or certain spots in the game, we would throw that thing around like a beach ball almost. It was a lot of fun. People were always like, why do they have a giant inflatable whale? And that picture I reposted on my story was actually caught by a Canton Rep photographer. And I don't know, I just thought it looked, loved it, you know, pretty similar to Odell Beckham Jr. I think mine was better because a whale is a little harder to catch than a football, but you know.
Oh, okay. I was wondering what the me greater than sign OBJ thing was, but now I have context, and there you go. And by the way, at Mitch.Balla, at Mitch Spinell on Instagram, and most of the places on here. So, Mitch, let's go over now to the other NFL games, because other than the Browns, there were some ones worth mentioning yesterday, and even outside the division, because the Ravens, yeah, we knew they were going to beat the Steelers, even though Huntley leaving with a concussion is bad for them. Kenny Pickett leaving with a concussion is rough for Pittsburgh, even though Trubisky had some decent throws yesterday. And, of course, now the Bengals are still atop the division with the Ravens. They're going to overtake them at this point. I still think I'm on your side with that. The Ravens are just going to kind of fall into the wild card, and who knows what Lamar is going to do this offseason. But other games that I wanted to talk about this week, because some of the ones that were very interesting, the midday games in particular, because we had 3 of them as blowouts at one point, and then 2 of them actually ended up coming to become close games. But the one that didn't become a blowout is the one that happened in San Francisco. How did that happen yesterday? How does Mr. Irrelevant beat the greatest of all time? Is San Francisco like the team right now, or is Tampa Bay just getting really, really, really exposed?
I think Tampa Bay sucks. I think their play calling is abysmal. I think that the coaches there that, really kind of took this over late and expected it to be without Tom Brady, because remember, Arians resigned, Tom Brady retired. This coaching staff was given the job, which a lot of these coaches were underneath Bruce Arians. They don't know what they're doing. Tom Brady looks as old as ever. It finally looks like, he's on his way out. I don't know if I'm going to really say that San Francisco is still the team to beat. They have one of, if not the best defense in the NFL, maybe not rating wise, but just based off the eye test. Kyle Shanahan's just an offensive genius. Him and Sean McVay are able to make quarterbacks thrive in their system because they can play to their strengths and get away from their weaknesses. Then you add in the fact of Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey. The Niners are good. And if Brock Purdy can play like that, Mitch, feel comfortable in saying you're going to see potentially, depending on how seeds fall out, an Eagles versus 49ers NFC championship game, because if the Niners play like that, they are the second best team in the NFC. But it's just so upsetting to know that Tampa is still in a playoff spot right now, and they are more than likely going to host a playoff game.
Yeah, the Giants are 7-4-1, and they lost to the Eagles yesterday, 48-22, and they're in 4th place. And the 6-7 Buccaneers are atop that NFC South. It's a bad division. We all know it's a bad division, but they're taking advantage of it right now. And who knows if Carolina might make a comeback here, because the Panthers, this was not what I expected. Them beating the Seahawks 30-24. I think this is the one game that like 3 of us picked Seahawks and the one guy picked Panthers, so now he looks like a freaking genius. Yes. I don't know what happened there. Seattle's got to rebound next week, or else, they might completely bottom out. And then Carolina is just playing with house money at this point. I think Steve Wilkes could do enough to get the interim tag taken off his job at this point going into next year. Just a weird game. And then we already mentioned, we didn't mention the Thursday night game because we were recording Thursday night. So we got to get into that. So we're getting into it a few days late. Rams versus Raiders. And this is the rough week for the Browns to lose in the fashion that they did, because everybody makes that dumb comparison now. Oh, they should have kept Baker. Baker had one good drive the entire game and looked completely inept against the Raiders of all teams.
I mean, he was only there for 48 hours.
I agree. And give credit to Baker. Doing that on 2 days, getting to the team where he only threw like 20 passes in those days, absolutely give him credit. But don't make it think like, this is the biggest regret the Browns have ever done.
No, the only regret, though, that I have is the fact that Baker only had one loss in his career against the Bengals, and it was when Freddie Kitchens was here the last game of the season against Joe Burrow. He was undefeated against the Bengals as the Browns starting quarterback, but we won't go there today, Mitch. We won't go there. Listen, got to give credit where credit's due. I don't care what people say out there, and if you want to go against it still, you're just a flat-out hater. He led a game-winning drive.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't see that often here in Cleveland. Sure, there was a penalty. But how many times did we see the Browns get blessed with penalties and he would still throw an interception, or we couldn't get it done? And sure enough, Baker Mayfield did that, and the Rams game, and the Rams are obviously done, but it was cool to see him in that moment, though, Mitch. Regardless, I think there was a lot of national media that were happy to see him like that, just because he looked like he was having fun. It was good to see him succeed, because this dude really, Mitch, according to everybody, this was it. This is his last opportunity to show he can belong in the NFL. I think he proved that. I also think that him actually only being there 2 days may have helped him, because he just went out there and threw the football. He didn't have to think about plays and dissect a whole lot about the offensive plays. And give credit to Sean McVay. If there was 2 places that Baker was going to go that I thought were going to help him the most, it was either the Rams or the Niners, because of McVay and Shanahan. Shanahan, obviously, with a longer track record of playing to quarterback strengths over their weakness. I mean, you go all the way back here to Cleveland. We had Brian Hoyer, and the Browns got off to a 7-3 start. Matt Ryan won an MVP. Kirk Cousins had his best year of his career up until this season in Washington with Shanahan as the offensive coordinator. This guy knows how to put his quarterback in the best spot to succeed. But Sean McVay also is labeled that offensive guru, somebody young, relatable to the players. And at the time, Mitch, not even talking about the Baker on the Browns, it was a huge win because the Browns, had they beat Cincinnati, then would have moved ahead of the Raiders. And now the Raiders are still ahead of the Browns in the playoff, scenario, even though the Browns are at a 0.4% chance. The Raiders aren't much better, but they do have a tiebreaker over the Browns now because of winning percentage and wins against teams in the AFC where the Browns would lose that tiebreaker.
Yeah. I'm sorry, since I'm out here in Nashville, we didn't spend a lot of time in downtown. We spent the night in the other town on Broadway, and we're going there tonight. I don't know what happened yesterday between the Jaguars and the Titans. That was a James Draws type of game where, like, Trevor Lawrence throws 3 touchdowns, the 5-8 Jaguars to beat the 7-6 Titans. And that's another bad division where Tennessee can beat up on Indianapolis and all them, but that's such an unnecessary loss for Tennessee. And that's such a weird, it makes them look so significantly weaker now compared to the Kansas Cities and the Cincinnatis and the Buffaloes.
You're right. And this is a team that, we both thought, even when the Colts hired Jeff Saturday and the Colts still have some talent there, we thought, oh, there's no way this is going to be close. The Titans are going to run away with this division. And Derrick Henry still had 121 yards and a touchdown, but you really couldn't utilize him much in the second half when you were trailing by 2-3 possessions the entire game. And wow. I mean, Lawrence, 368 yards, 30 of 42 and 3 touchdowns. A tremendous game for him.
What was Ryan Tannehill's numbers? Because I know he did not have a good game at all.
Tannehill was 25 of 38, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick.
One pick. Okay.
Not terrible.
Not terrible. I didn't mean terrible. Yeah.
But it was just lack of, I think, effort. I think the Titans kind of came out, Mitch, for one of the few times we ever see it, and expected to win without actually having to play their best football. And maybe against the Jaguars last year or even earlier in the season, that would work. But the Jags are kind of in this spot now where they're starting to click, find things offensively. Evan Ingram. I mean, he was a guy in the offseason that left the Giants because he didn't like the New York media and the pressure. 11 catches, 162 yards and 2 touchdowns as the tight end yesterday. Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Marvin Jones Jr. I mean, these wide receivers actually played well for the Jags and Doug Peterson yesterday. But yeah, that was a game I did not see coming. They were actually, the Titans money line was on a parlay of mine. So obviously that did not cash.
Yeah.
Just bizarre. But you mentioned the AFC South, and the Titans are still ahead. They still have a comfortable 2-game lead now over Jacksonville. And really, it's only 2 games because if they tie, Jacksonville now would have the tiebreaker over them.
Right.
The Colts 4-8, they had a bye this week. They're not dead yet either, but this is still the Titans division to lose.
Speaking of New York, a very interesting game yesterday between Buffalo and the Jets. 20-12 Bills win. But is this a team, Mitch, that, like, if the Jets were to sneak in as a 6 or a 7 seed and they face Buffalo a third time, is that a matchup that the Jets could end up winning, even if it's in Buffalo?
I would still probably bet on Buffalo, but I wouldn't be shocked because this is a team that already beat the Bills one time this year in New York, and this is a team that only lost by 8 yesterday on the road. And Mike White, 27 of 44, left the game 3 different times because of just blows to the abdomen and ribs. And really, we talk about how much crap we gave the Dolphins for putting Tua back in earlier this season after he suffered a concussion, was wobbly. It was back injury, hit to the head against the Bengals on Thursday Night Football. Was the hospital, obviously. The Jets need to be investigated for this too, Mitch, because he left the game 2 separate times, came back in, and then afterwards doesn't even go to the locker room. They take him to the hospital to examine the inside of him. It's just, what are we doing here? You talk about putting a player in harm's way. I get maybe Mike White wanted to go out there. I totally get it. But we talked about this earlier when we started this podcast up, and all the Browns fans talked about last year because we saw it. A medical staff is there to stop a player from putting himself in harm's way. We saw it with Baker Mayfield last year, and we still to this day wonder, why did they never hold Baker out? And this yesterday, it really, to me, it raises some questions on why did they put him back out there? Joe Flacco took 3 snaps or threw the ball 3 times, but the Jets defense is legit, and defense always travels. And now you're talking about a game that was bad weather yesterday. And now you're talking about they could play Buffalo potentially. If Buffalo gets the 1 seed, the Jets would have to win a playoff game, obviously. But you could be playing Buffalo in late January, where you would expect the weather to be what it was yesterday, if not worse. And Buffalo's offense right now, Mitch, does not look good. Allen only 147 yards and a touchdown throwing yesterday. You had a reporter yesterday, not really asked,
Yes,
kind of told him this offense doesn't look like an offense that's good enough to win the Super Bowl.
I
That
couldn't
wasn't a
believe
question.
that.
It was a statement. I don't know why the reporter said that. And Josh Allen replied, okay,
Okay.
with a little smirk. Because at the end of the day, Mitch, all you have to do is win. This isn't college football where style points matter. It doesn't matter. A win by 30 points is just as valuable as a win by 1 point in the NFL. And the Bills still got a win yesterday. They win by 8. They didn't play their best football. They still sit atop the AFC in terms of holding the first round bye, which is huge, and having home field advantage throughout the playoffs, which is also huge because Kansas City has had it, what I believe is now 4 straight years.
Yep.
And you want to see what if Buffalo can hold them to make them come here and play in a different environment on the road. But I absolutely think this Jets team could potentially pull an upset in the playoffs if they see the Bills again. I don't think the Bills want to see the Jets again. More importantly, what does this say about the Jets that Zach Wilson wasn't even dressed yesterday? Is Zach Wilson's time in New York already done?
It depends what happens in the offseason. It depends what happens with Mike White. But it's strange, man. I mean, it's basically like they're keeping this punishment going and going and going for him because you think, oh, it's just gonna be this one game. No, Mike White's still looking like the guy. And if you're gonna have a young quarterback compared to a more level-headed quarterback in Joe Flacco, you're gonna take Flacco in this instance, even though Flacco is no longer in his prime. It's so weird how fast Zach Wilson has fallen, especially with some of the games he had earlier in the season. But this is just a fascinating fall that I don't know. Could it end up with him being on a team that needs a quarterback into next year? Maybe Indianapolis, maybe somewhere else. But it is just strange to see where he's fallen.
You mean Indianapolis could be going for what I believe would be their 4th different starting quarterback in 4 years?
They need a younger guy in this instance. I personally would want to see them try and trade for Garoppolo. Maybe San Francisco could try and get back some of those draft picks they traded away for Trey Lance. Because that's the thing about Brock Purdy. Do you make Trey your backup and trade Jimmy G? Because Lance didn't look great in his sample time this year, and Purdy, I get it. Purdy's a 7th round pick. He'll probably get figured out eventually. But he had this weird this poise about him yesterday. He was escaping tackles and making throws on the run. That didn't look like a guy who was thrust in as a 7th round pick right to his first start. But it was interesting for me.
100%. And obviously, like, we'll have to wait and see what happens the rest of the season. It's a big one for San Francisco this Thursday night. We'll talk about it in the next episode on the podcast, but playing Seattle, that really is clinging to their last breath of air in terms of making the playoffs. So Seattle's going to be hungry. Can Purdy keep it up? And if he does, you're right. Where do the Niners go? And because Trey Lance had not looked impressive in the few games he started this year. This is a guy they mortgaged the entire future in, Mitch. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. The Broncos mortgaged their entire future in Russell Wilson, and that has completely backfired on them. I mean,
I'll give them credit. They nearly came back yesterday, but yeah, it's a rough one. I posted that picture of Russell Wilson with the backwards head yesterday, which is one of my favorite memes of this NFL season. Really quickly, speaking of a win is a win, those Dallas Cowboys barely pulling it out over the 1-win Texans, which is so annoying. The Lions, man, these Lions, Man Campbell is getting it done against, a team that some people thought, some people still think is an NFC pretender, and I might be on that side still. But Detroit, they're already 6 wins into this season. They're going to get a top 5 pick along with this one too. So it's going to be very fascinating. And then obviously the Sunday night game, Chargers beating the Dolphins.
Oh my God.
The fact that it was that close, and it was, I don't remember exactly. I'm trying to figure out what was the final tally for Tua Tagovailoa. When I turned on the TV, when I got back to my hotel, he was 3 of 17.
Yep.
And had the one long touchdown pass to Tyreek Hill, going to the numbers that were at the end of the game.
And he finished 10 of 28 for 145 yards and a touchdown.
Yes, because he made a couple passes on the last drive trying to salvage the game. But I was like, what is going on with this guy? Like, I couldn't believe it.
And really, listen, I'm here for everybody that wants to bash Tua. I get it because he looked so bad. And really, the Dolphins have kind of got figured out the past couple of weeks, Mitch. They have not looked as explosive as we thought. Now, Tyreek Hill got banged up at the end of the game. This says more to me about the Chargers.
I agree.
How do you have a game like this at home in your own home stadium? You hold Tua and this high-powered offense to 17 points, and you barely win. Justin Herbert had 367 yards, and that is why I cannot sit here and anoint him as this top 5 quarterback in the NFL. There is something wrong in LA with Brandon Staley and the Chargers. He finally had Keenan Allen and Mike Williams back last night. Mike Williams made an impact right away, scoring the first touchdown for the Chargers, but there's something going on there, Mitch.
It's the running game.
I don't know what it is.
It's the running game.
Yes, and Eckler only had 45 yards, but
yeah,
to only
that's what it is.
I mean, you threw the ball 51 times last night.
Yeah, you're relying on him a lot.
It's just, this is a team that if they get in the playoffs, Mitch, they're losing. And I still don't think they're going to make the playoffs because I think their head coach holds them back. I don't know if he has enough trust in the running game. And Eckler is a premier back in the NFL. I mean, he's been phenomenal last year. He had 8 catches out of the backfield for 59 yards last night, 15 carries for 45. He had 1 score rushing. But this team, we saw it last year. We've seen it at times this year. They're just like the Browns. They want to go with the analytics. They don't like to take the points. They like to try to get cute. And it's bitten them in the butt so often, and it's going to continue as the season goes on. But I think last night's game says more about the Chargers offensively with the worries than it does about the Dolphins losing that game. Because the Dolphins are a tough team.
Yeah, it was the inability to finish because you have 3 field goals and you're just not able to finish those drives. And Herbert's, carrying the bulk of that work. I thought it was impressive the way he was able to handle certain drives. Nearly fumbled one away, which near the end of the game, which I was surprised by. But I don't know. I still think this is a team that can make it. They have all their pieces back together, and they can make a run here in the last 4 games that could solidify them a chance, not to catch up with the Chiefs, but to gain some ground here in this very serious AFC. So when we come back, we'll get into our final segment here of topics. We'll be right back right after these breaks.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
Hard work is something you're accustomed to. Van Nostrand Young understands that principle. Our access is achieved with organizations like Grange Insurance. Safety and prevention specialists utilize our VanCan assessments process to ensure that you and your colleagues are in the best hands. You want the safest environment for your business, and we can guide you there.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
If you're purchasing a new home, the team at Hartzler's Quality Housing is here to help. Take advantage of record low interest rates to make your new home a reality. Locally owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's Quality Housing has the experience to guide you through the process. You'll find a wide selection of model homes on site to fit any budget. Open 6 days a week just off I-77. You can also visit them online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
When others treat your fries as an afterthought, all you're left with are cold, soggy fries. That's why Wendy's new fries are ones you won't forget, guaranteed to be hot and crispy, or we'll replace them. We're talking natural cut, skin-on fries, perfectly seasoned with a hint of sea salt. In fact, they're even preferred almost 2-to-1 over McDonald's. These are fries so hot and crispy, they beg a new question.
What would you like with your fries?
Try them today, only at Wendy's.
At participating U.S. Wendy's, taste preference based on a national taste test by an independent research company.
And welcome you back here to the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Spinell and Mitchell Balla. Final segment here. Let's go over now to the Heisman race, where the result I kind of knew was going to it was going to happen this way. Caleb Williams ended up winning on Saturday night, the quarterback from USC, the third quarterback from USC to ever win it over CJ Stroud, Stetson Bennett, and Max Duggan. Mitch, I mean, he had the best numbers. He arguably had the best end of the season, even though the complete end of the season was the opposite. And out of all those four, that was probably the best overall resume. I wasn't really disagreeing with that result.
Yeah, you're right. It probably was the best resume. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with it, but I go back to the point. This Heisman race was, I don't want to say pathetic, but this just had no juice to it as in years past.
I agree.
I guess my only gripe with it is the fact that it went to the quarterback that is not playing in the college football playoff. You had three quarterbacks there that all three of their teams are in the college football playoff. And you have one there that's team isn't, and he wins the Heisman. He had the better numbers. I get it. I actually believe that they should just not have given it to anybody and given it to Reggie Bush, who had his trophy taken away, because, I think Reggie Bush deserves to have that trophy back, especially with where we are in the NIL.
Yeah.
The greatest college football players we've ever seen. But I believe the final tally was actually Caleb Williams, Max Duggan, CJ Stroud, and Stetson Bennett. I expected Bennett to finish fourth. I kind of expected Stroud to finish second. I am a Buckeye homer, but I'm actually kind of happy Duggan finished second, because I think he deserves a little more respect. I think that he is somebody that has not gotten the love he deserves. He was on one of another podcast I listened to, and, he's just an awesome kid, awesome guy to listen to. He's a funny guy. And, everybody's counted them out all year. And he talked about that Big 12 championship game, and they questioned some of the play calls, obviously that we talked about, Mitch, on 3rd and 4th down. And he said, don't question it, because hindsight's 2020. That running back was hard to stop. Back-to-back plays this year, all season long. He trusted him. And then he also admitted he was out of gas, and we saw him. They mentioned, how many scars do you have in your arm and cuts? And he said too many to even count. He's just a gamer. And that's what I like. There was a lot of people who actually read a report that a lot of people didn't vote Caleb Williams because of the whole thing that came out of him and his nail polish that he wears, where he puts an expletive on one finger, and then the abbreviation of the team playing. This time was Utah, so it spelled out Utah the entire way. It rubbed people the wrong way. That's what's going to happen when you have a lot of the older generation voting on this. I mean, it's the same way with the Hall of Fame for Major League Baseball. Ken Griffey Jr. didn't get unanimous because he wore his hat backwards to a home run derby. Still a complete joke, because he should have been a unanimous Hall of Famer, but it went to the better player. Like, let's be honest here. He did not show up in the Pac-12 championship game. He was hindered by an injury. It looked like. At the end of the day, the other three quarterbacks that were there, Mitch, would it have been nice to win the award? Yes, but they are all playing for something much bigger than a personal accomplishment that they all say is a team accomplishment. But at the end of the day, one name goes in that trophy for the year they win it.
Yeah, and I'm sure as much as they wanted to win the Heisman, I'm sure they did. I wonder if those other three quarterbacks might have been like looking at each other thinking, oh, well, we at least got this thing going on for us.
Well, Caleb Williams even said that in his speech.
Yes.
Caleb Williams even said, I'm up here with the trophy. The other three of you guys are in the college football playoff, like making fun of himself, saying like, you know what, this is probably the best I could do if I'm not going to make the playoff. You guys get to go play in games that really mean something in terms of viewership and significance of winning the bowls. But continue.
No, I mean, I was going to say, and depending on how he goes in the draft, his stock might be up there as well. I was surprised too, by the way, on Saturday, that tweet from, of all people, former Heisman winner Robert Griffin III. I don't know if you saw this. He actually was vouching for CJ Stroud. He has his tweet that I have here, quote, on Saturday at 11:24 a.m. CJ Stroud has been so phenomenal for Ohio State. We have become spoiled by his greatness, all caps. No QB in the country has made more NFL throws. Egbuka and Harrison Jr., aka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison, were 1,000-yard receivers because of CJ's ability to be a prime-time distributor of the football. Give him his roses. I like that he's praising him. I like that he's giving shout out to an Ohio State quarterback. I don't know if necessarily he's making Egbuka and Harrison. Granted, he did have Olave and Wilson in the past. I don't know about that. Like, we talked about this right after the Michigan game, where CJ kind of addressed his standing in Ohio State QB lore in some way. I'll never have beaten Michigan. I'll never have won the Big Ten. I'll never have done this. I wonder what CJ's legacy is going to be as an Ohio State quarterback. And I know this is a question that only sports podcasters care about. It's only we care about it, and the guys who talk at the bar. But you look at the run that Ohio State's had in the last decade of quarterbacks, it's been a pretty good one. At least all of them have made some significant impact on the college game, if not the NFL game, and much more less the NFL game. But Stroud is an interesting case where it's the first time you don't have all those titles and all that success compared to them. And the next 2 weeks might change that. But is this a guy that'll be kind of up there in terms of the rest of the not even just the past decade for Ohio State, of the all-time Ohio State QBs, or is this kind of going to go in the, like, Bobby Hoying, Joe Germain kind of category?
It all depends what happens against Georgia on December 31st. And if they win and advance, and then who they play in the national championship. If CJ Stroud wants to be remembered as one of the top quarterbacks in Ohio State history, he's already mentioned he never won a Big Ten championship and never beat Michigan. This is how you get remembered. And if he fizzles out and flames out in the semifinal game, or Mitch, dare I say, makes it to the national championship game and loses to Michigan, he will be forgotten about. His numbers will be there when you talk about numbers that future quarterbacks are going to break, when you're comparing future Ohio State quarterbacks. But in terms of significance, JT Barrett's name is always going to be remembered more than CJ Stroud, because JT Barrett was 4-0 against Michigan, four Big Ten championships, but 4-0 against Michigan, had a heck of a career at Ohio State, holds some records as well. Dwayne Haskins didn't lose to Michigan. Justin Fields didn't lose to Michigan. These are all quarterbacks that won the biggest game of the year that we always look at when the schedule comes out, is which Saturday is it? Generally, it's the Saturday after Thanksgiving. CJ Stroud has a chance to be remembered, but he's going to have to ball out and put everything behind him that's happened in the recent weeks, in the past 2 seasons, in terms of his failures.
Even Cardale Jones, you could say, has made a case for doing that, because he ended up winning the big one of all. I mean, again, if CJ were to ball out in the semifinal, get to the championship game, and then ball out by beating the rival, that would probably place him above I of all those quarterbacks. And it's very fascinating how a short string of events can determine the entire lifetime of legacy for a certain, not just for him, but an entire group of people on that Ohio State staff and that program in general.
Another thing in terms of CJ Stroud and college football and awards is, if CJ Stroud did not win the Heisman, how did Marvin Harrison Jr. not win the Blitnikoff Award? I don't know. I don't know what happened there. How did he not win the best wide receiver in college football award? Because he's the best wide receiver in college football. I don't care what award went to Tennessee's Jalen Hyatt. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best wide receiver in college football. And for him not to win it is laughable, especially if Stroud wasn't going to win Heisman. Because if he won Heisman, you could say, okay, Harrison Jr. was as good of that because he had a Heisman throwing to him. It's just laughable. And I don't know if you saw, Mitch, but as soon as the award was announced, Harrison Jr. was inside the practice facility already practicing because of how upset he was, according to teammates and people around him, that he did not get the award.
I believe it. I believe it with the kind of, that
it was on
personality he has.
Stories. He was starting with the jugs machine, loading it up.
I'm hoping that it'll pay off here in a few weeks. As far as college football, another story we had was Mount Union shouting out the Purple Raiders because they're headed back to the Division III national championship for the 22nd time in 30 years. They beat Wartburg 34-31 this past weekend. They were down 31-28 with 3 minutes left. They ended up scoring with 31 seconds left. Braxton Plunk had a big game, 396 yards, 2 touchdowns. Wayne Ruby Jr., 8 catches, 103 yards, 2 scores. They'll play in the Stag Bowl against North Central from Illinois. That'll be a big one. I mean, Mount Union it was always like, growing up, it was always Mount Union and Wisconsin Whitewater for the championship every year. And then that's kind of fallen off in recent years. And now Mount Union is back, and it's cool to see that program come back up. And I don't know, it's just it's a nice thing we wanted to make sure we mentioned on the show.
Absolutely. And they're only about 30 minutes away from me here in Canton, Ohio.
Yep.
But you're right. It was always Wisconsin Whitewater. Then it was Mount versus Mary Hardin Baylor. And that was who they could play. But North Central beat Mary Hardin Baylor. And now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Mitch, this is a rematch of a semifinal game last year in which North Central beat Mount Union. So the Purple Raiders, not only do they have something to play for in terms of national championship, but looking to get some revenge on North Central as well. That is on December 16th, which is this Friday, 7:00 kickoff. I'm going to be tuned in because it's always fun to watch Mount Union in prime time on a national broadcast, but Sea of Mount Union, like you said, 22nd national championship game appearance in 30 years. And this is their first time making it back in over 1,000 days, which is also crazy because it had never been that long of a drought for the Purple Raiders. But we'll have to see what they do. Hopefully they can bring home a national championship here to Alliance, Ohio.
For sure.
Alliance, Ohio.
For sure. I haven't been to Mountain Union's campus in a while. I always like that little area, and I like to go back to it. And finally, our condolences at the end of the show go out to the family of former NBA All-Star and longtime head coach Paul Silas, who passed away yesterday at the age of 79. Silas was a longtime NBA veteran, ended up playing for 3 championship teams in the 70s with the Celtics 2 times and the last Seattle Sonics team to win in 79. And then, of course, he went into coaching after his career. Had a short stint, or not a short stint, but a 4-year stint with the Clippers in the 80s when they were still in San Diego. And then it would be like 16 years before he would get his next head coaching spot after some assistant jobs. He went to the Charlotte Hornets, had 4 consecutive playoff teams for them. So he could have some teams that could get in there. They just never got out of the first round. I think they got to 2 conference semifinals, and that was it. And then, of course, they moved to New Orleans. He was there for a season. And then he joined the Cavaliers for the first 2 seasons of LeBron James's NBA career. And then midway through the second season, he ended up parting ways. Came back to coach in Charlotte for the Bobcats for 2 years. I believe he was part of that 7-win team during the lockout year. So then he ended up going, and then he ended up with a 387-488 career coaching record. And he has spawned a current head coach in the NBA, Mitch, with Steven Silas, who is the head coach of the Houston Rockets.
And the Rockets beat the Bucks yesterday, and you had Jalen Green afterwards after their 97-92 win. So that one was for coach. He was LeBron James' first head coach in the NBA, Mitch, and the Cavaliers all the way back then hired Silas because they wanted a professional. They wanted somebody that was going to be able to sit down an 18-year-old kid that had the most expectations we've probably ever seen from a number 1 overall pick, be able to be the figure they needed to help lead that Cavaliers team. And, he's most notable for a rant during a press conference in terms of Eric Snow, where a reporter kept asking him about a dust up they had, and Silas would not answer it and kept telling the reporter he wouldn't answer it, stop mentioning his name. The reporter kept going back at him, and it led to really an explosion from Silas. But a lot of people said, why hasn't LeBron commented on it? LeBron did comment on it. He said he was, quote, probably one of the greatest human beings I've ever been around. The start of my journey in this league started with him, end quote, in terms of head coach Paul Silas. So yes, our condolences, obviously ties here to Cleveland, but also just ties all around the NBA. Great person in the NBA in general who left an impact across the league.
I got to fire up, this is going to sound like a weird transition. I got to fire up my PlayStation 2 when I get home because I still have my copy of NBA Live 2005 on the thing. And every time I would play the Cavaliers, they would have the player introductions before the game on the simulation, and it would always end with the coach, Paul Silas. And that was my first introduction to that era of Cavs teams. By the way, I had Luke Jackson on the starting 5. He was always awful every time I played with him, every single time. Not to say he was awful in real life, just the game version. They didn't program him like he did Peja Stojakovic in that era for the Kings. I'm happy you know that. And I'm happy you've been watching and listening to the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. To those of you watching or listening wherever you are. Of course, you can watch here on YouTube. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Or if you're listening on a podcast platform, we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud. Spotify is watch and listen. Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud, listen only. We're also on our website, BigTimeSportsOhio.com. You can find our posts there and our games and our schedule for games. And, Big Time Sports Ohio on Facebook and Instagram, BTS Ohio on Twitter, at BTS Ohio, at Mitch Spinell, at Mitchell Balla, everywhere. Mitch, what's the fact of the day?
That was a mouthful. And no, that wasn't a fact of the day. I was just, stating the obvious there. Your fact of the day is we know Guinness Brewery, right? Guinness Beer, obviously.
Yes.
Although no longer connected, the Guinness World Records was founded by the director of Guinness Brewery in the 1950s. So they were together, now no longer together. But that is why the Guinness World Records is called the Guinness World Records. It was founded by Guinness Brewery.
Makes sense. So it reminds me of that JD Power thing where I would see them do stuff for cars. And then they had this other no, it wasn't JD Power. What was another brand of something that had 2 different connections? I'll have to remember on the next podcast. Of course, we hope you listen or watch to that next episode of the Big Time Sports Podcast Show.